All right, let's talk about a word. A word that, if you're a parent or a teacher, you probably hear, about a dozen times a day: fairness. It sounds so simple, right? But it's actually this huge, complex idea. Getting a handle on it is, well, it's pretty much essential for navigating life with kids, so let's jump right.
I mean, come on, you've heard it, right? That high-pitched cry from the backseat of the car or maybe across the classroom. That's not fair. We've all been there. Heck, we've probably all said it. It's this deep, universal feeling of injustice, and it almost always starts with those three little words. But what are we actually saying? What does it really mean for something to be unfair?
And that right there. That brings us to what I like to call the fairness puzzle. Because think about it. How can we teach fairness or even practice it if we don't really have a solid grip on what it is? And I'll give you a hint. It has very little to do with everyone getting the exact same piece of the pie. Okay, so let's get a definition on the table. At its heart, fairness is really about two big things. First, it's about looking at others without bias, right? Trying to see things clearly. But the second part, this is the real game changer. It's about treating people equitably. And you gotta catch that word. It's not equally. Equal means everybody gets the same. Equitable, well, that means everyone gets what they need to be successful or to have a fair shot. And that is a world of difference. You know, this whole idea is wrapped up perfectly in something we all learned as kids: the golden rule. Do unto others, you know the rest. It's really the foundation of fairness, isn't it? It forces us to stop and think, to use empathy, to literally put ourselves in someone else's shoes. It's probably the first and most powerful guide to fairness we ever get. All right, so we've got the basic idea down. But now we're going to get into where things get a little messy. We're going to look at this through a child's eyes. Because the way a kid sees fairness and the way an adult sees it, they are worlds apart. And that gap in perception, that's where almost every single one of those "that's not fair" explosions comes from. And here it is, the big disconnect. For kids, the world of fairness is totally black and white. There are no gray areas. If a rule exists, it's like a law of physics. It applies to every single person, every single time. No excuses, no exceptions. But us, as adults, we live in the gray. We know that context is everything. We get that sometimes rules have to bend a little. Let's put this into a real situation. Picture a classroom. The rule is you can choose your own seat. Simple enough. But then there's Garrett. Garrett always has to sit right next to the teacher. Now, from Garrett's point of view, what is that? Totally unfair. He never gets a choice. And from the other kid's perspective, also unfair. They see Garrett getting special attention. In their black and white world, a major rule is being broken, and it just doesn't make sense. But, and this is the key to the whole thing, the teacher has a perfectly good reason. The thing is, without an explanation, without telling the class that this helps Garrett focus and keeps the whole class from being disrupted, the teacher's decision just seems random. It looks like Garrett is the favorite. It's the why, the explanation. That's the magic ingredient that turns something that looks unfair into something that's actually very fair and reasonable. Okay, so we get it. There's this gap between how kids and adults see things. So what now? What do we actually do about it? Let's get practical. It's time to talk about fairness in action, how we can roll up our sleeves and actually teach this stuff. Okay, this first one is my absolute favorite. It's called the cake cutting method, and it is pure genius. So simple. Here's how it works. You have one kid cut the cake, but, and here's the twist, the other kid gets to choose their piece first. See what happens? The cutter is suddenly highly motivated to make those slices as perfectly equal as humanly possible, because they know they're getting the last pick. It's this beautiful, self-correcting system for fairness. No arguing needed. And that's just one trick. There are so many others. Got a toy everyone wants? Use an egg timer. It's not you being the bad guy. The timer is the impartial judge. Worried about chores? A helper chart makes it clear who does what, so everyone pulls their own weight. Even just playing games that involve taking turns, like checkers or hide and seek, builds that fairness muscle. Oh, and a big one, let kids help make the rules. When they have a say, they totally get why the rules are fair to begin with. It gives them real ownership. But look, all these games and charts, they're only part of the story. The truth is, kids learn the most about fairness from watching us. And this is where things can get really complicated. What happens when they see the rules getting bent for adults? What kind of message are we sending when it looks like we care more about winning than we do about playing fair? Let me give you a famous real-world example. It's from the 1996 World Series. A baseball player did something wrong, spat at an umpire, and the rule was clear. He should have been suspended immediately. But it was the World Series, so the league delayed the suspension until after the series was over, so his team wouldn't be at a disadvantage. The message that sent was crystal clear. Yeah, the rules are important, but not as important as winning the championship. So that's the question we've got to ask ourselves, right? When our kids see stuff like that, what do they learn? They learn that rules are flexible. They learn that if you're important enough or talented enough, the rules don't really apply to you. And that just completely guts all those lessons we try so hard to teach about integrity and good sportsmanship. So let's bring this all back to our own homes. What can we do? First, just model it. Show them what fairness looks like. And remember Garrett's story? Ditch the because I said so. It's a dead end. Explain your reasoning. And here's a great one. When your kid screams, that's not fair, turn it back to them. Try a role reversal. Ask, okay, you're in charge. How would you make this fair for everybody involved? Suddenly, they switch from just complaining to actually trying to solve the problem. All right, we have covered a lot today. We've talked about what fairness even is, how kids see it so differently, and some really practical ways to teach it. So let's wrap this all up with one final, really important takeaway. Because at the end of the day, teaching fairness isn't about dividing the cake into perfectly equal slices. Not at all. It's about creating a world for our kids that feels consistent and makes sense. It's about having the patience to explain those tricky gray areas. And more than anything, it's about building their empathy muscle, helping them understand that sometimes things can be different for someone like Garrett, and that can actually be the fairest thing of all. So I'll leave you with this final thought. You don't have to make some huge, grand gesture to model fairness. It can be something really small. It could be just explaining why an older brother gets a later bedtime. Or maybe it's finally making that chore chart you've been talking about. So think about it. What's one small, simple thing you can do this week to bring a little more fairness into your world? Thanks for joining me.